And to continue this discussion, joining us now, Congressman Dutch Ruppersberger, who is the top Democrat on the House Intelligence Committee, and in New York, Congressman Pete King, who's on both Intelligence and the Homeland Securities Committee. Let me just start with you, Congressman King, up there in New York. You heard what General Hayden said. Do you think that the reforms the president announced on Friday are necessary? You came down pretty hard on him. You said this is the problems we have here is just a failure by the president. What did you mean by that?
Well, what I mean is I fully support the NSA program. It's been effective. It's done an outstanding job. General Alexander, who's head of the NSA, is a true patriot. And I applaud the president for continuing the NSA program. What I'm very critical of him for, though, is basically he's been silent for the last 2 months. He's allowed the Edward Snowdens and the others of the world to dominate the media. And now we have so many people who actually think the NSA is spying on people, is listening to our phone calls, is reading our emails. And to me, he was just, for some reason, Judge Ruppersberger out there, Mike Rogers out there, I was doing what I could do, Saxby Chambliss, all defending the program. The president should have been out. He's commander-in-chief. We're in war. We're in a very desperate war with al-Qaeda terrorists and their affiliates. And the president of the United States, as commander-in-chief, had the obligation to be aggressively and effectively defending his program, and he really didn't do it. And even the other day when he was at the news conference, and I agree with General Hayden, I think the president wants to keep the program going, but I just thought there was too much equivalency there. I think he should have denounced Snowden. You know, he's not a patriot. He's a person who has been indicted for espionage in time of war. And that this program, there's so many misconceptions, so many misperceptions out there, and I think that's partly because the president, who has the bully pulpit, did not use it during the last several months when people in my party, Dutch's party, people in Congress were, I think, being very irresponsible. I think the vote on the House floor was irresponsible. I think that much of the stuff that's being said on television, like by prominent politicians saying that the government is listening to their phone calls, that's all nonsense.
Okay.
But it's spread a paranoia in the country. The president should have been out there sooner.
Let's bring Congressman Ruppersberger in here. I thought it was interesting. General Hayden said he calls Edward Snowden a defector. He said he wouldn't go so far as to call him a traitor, but a defector, which I think was kind of interesting.
Well, when you work for the intelligence community, first thing you take an oath not to violate classified information. This individual now has said that he went in for the purpose of gaining information. He turned his back on his country. And where did he go once he got this information? He went to China, and then he went to Russia. So that speaks for itself. Bottom line, we need to move forward with this. I think anyone who is working in the intelligence area, including the president, understands that this program helps protect us. It really might have protected us from 9/11 attack, because we didn't know that one of the terrorists was in San Diego in the United States. And if we would have known that, it might help.
Well, what about, do you think any reforms are necessary?
Yes, and this is the reason. We in politics have to deal with perception, not just reality. And we need to do better in educating our public so they are not fearful that we, the government, are violating their privacy. That's very important. And Chairman Rogers and I, Chairman Feinstein and Chambliss, we are all in the Intelligence Committee, went to the White House, and I applaud the President for bringing us there and talking about how do we educate the public, that we need this program, and the President understands that.
Do you at this point feel that the agency has invaded anyone's privacy?
Absolutely not.
You do not.
There are checks and balances that we have. We have congressional oversight, which we need to do and continue to do. We have the court oversight. We have those checks and balances in our country. Better privacy rights than anyone. And during the whole time that this program has been in effect, there have been some mistakes, but not one intentional violation. And so this speaks for itself, that we have to do more. And Nancy Pelosi and I feel very strongly that we need to educate our members. Since the Snowden event, we've had General Alexander come to Congress, briefing both the Republican caucus and the Democratic caucus. He's been there on 3 occasions. Anyone who wants to come has the ability to come. Now remember, we specialize in intelligence, and we work this every day. But people who are on the Education Committee, on the Budget Committee, on the other committees, they have their work too. But we have opened it up. It's unprecedented, the amount of hearings that we've had, classified hearings. So members, if if they want, they're not required, can get this information.
Congressman King, let me ask you about one of the things that the president talked about. He talked about putting this so-called privacy advocate into the FISA court, the secret court that tells the National Security Agency, gives it permission to wiretap people's phones and things of that nature. In a real world, is that practical? Because it occurs to me that some of this may depend on split-second decisions. I mean, if we find out countries under imminent attack, can you actually sit there and have a long argument about the pluses and minuses of this, or do you have to leave that to later?
Bob, I agree with what you just said. I think it would be very impractical to have it done. Now, maybe on some a general policy issue where the court is going to make a decision, perhaps you could bring in an advocate. But no, on day-to-day life-and-death decisions, I believe absolutely not. And also, I think we should keep in mind, somehow people say this is secret. This goes against all our traditions. Grand jury proceedings are secret. There's no adversarial lawyer allowed into a grand jury room. And also, and any other, whether it's drug cases, organized crime cases, child pornography cases, the government obtains warrants from judges without advocates being there for the other side. This is a legitimate role of government, and when we're talking about life and death, and having lived in New York through 9/11, I know what life and death means. We cannot afford to have this become a debating society. We need decisions made quickly, yes or no, up or down, because lives are at stake.
Let me ask both of you, I'm sorry,
sure.
Congressman Ruppersberger, you wanted to add something?
No, I'm fine.
I just wanted to ask both of you about this. These embassies that we closed last week are now opening today. There was some criticism of this decision to close them, that maybe there may have been an overreaction to that. Do you think that was...
Absolutely not.
No.
There was strong intelligence information. And anytime an American is put at risk in the world or our homeland, we have to deal with it. We have to be cautious. It wasn't just one incident. There's corroboration that's occurring. And there was strong intelligence, especially in Yemen. We've done a good job in Afghanistan and Pakistan dealing with the core of Al-Qaeda. But Al-Qaeda in the Arabian Peninsula is getting stronger, and their focus has been the United States. If you recall Laki, who was brought to justice, targeted on the United States, the shoe bomber, the cartridge bomber, and they keep focusing on the United States. So we have a lot of work to do, and it's just not us, it's also our allies. We're working together on these issues.
Do you think they overreacted, Congressman King?
No, Bob, I don't. I agree with Judge. The intelligence that I saw here was at least as powerful as anything I've seen since 9/11. Probably the closest to this would have been the liquid explosive plot out of London in 2006. But this was very credible. It was corroborated, and it spoke of a massive attack. And to me, it was the right thing to do. Now, I think we should stay on this. If we do get through this without there being an attack, I do think we have to be more aggressive. We should be doing more interrogating to try to head these off in the future. But no, the president did the right thing, and I think we should try to put partisanship aside here. And I've been very critical of the president on certain aspects. However, when it comes to this, we can't be critical of Benghazi because there was not enough protection, and now to say we're being critical because there's too much. It's best to opt to secure American lives, especially in this situation. This was really out of the ordinary. In an extraordinary world, this was the most extraordinary I've seen in at least the last 7 years. I think Dutch would agree with that.
Yeah.
Can either of you give me a little more detail on why you thought it was so serious, Congressman Ruppersberger?
I can only say, look, we can't give out sources and methods, but we can say that we got a lot of intelligence from high levels in Al-Qaeda, both with the leadership and also in the Arabian Peninsula. We also just got other sources of information. We checked corroboration, and clearly the people of Al-Qaeda and the terrorists and the jihad, they're out there planning every day to kill us, and that's why it's so important that we do the best we can. The best defense against terrorism is intelligence. We have men and women who work at the NSA, work at the CIA. They get up every morning thinking they're helping their country. They do it pursuant to the law, and we have checks and balances, but we have to do better, and we will. We will have some more legislation, but we're not going to hold people's hands behind their back and say that you can't do this and can't do that. But we have to do it pursuant to the law and deal with this perception. And I'm happy that the president has made an issue.
Well, Congressman King, what was it, if you can say, that convinced you that this was the most serious thing since what we were finding out about in the days after 9/11? Is there any specific thing?
Yes, there were several. This was not a case of connecting the dots. This was clear. explicit intelligence and evidence. That's as far as I can go. But if I could add on to what Judge said, these people in the NSA are patriots. It's probably what's annoyed me the most over the last several months is people casually using words like spying, snooping. What is the NSA up to now? Does anyone really think that General Alexander wants to snoop on Americans or is listening in on private conversations? I think that has really demeaned the whole political dialogue, and that's why I wish the president would be more outgoing before this, and defended the NSA a lot more than he did, because this has really been a slander on the thousands of good men and women who every day dedicate their lives to our country, and particularly General Alexander, who was as patriotic as anyone I've ever met in government or anywhere. And this is just too much loose talk here. Again, every time I hear snooping and spying, it just drives me crazy, because we know, Dutch and I and others know what these men and women are doing, and they're absolutely dedicated patriots.
All right. Well,
I just want to point out, Peter and Chairman Rogers, that we have a very bipartisan committee in the Intelligence Committee. We have far left, we have far right, but we work together as a team because the stakes are too high. And that's a very important issue. Peter, I thank you for being on with us today, and I agree with a lot of your points.
All right. Well, thanks to both of you. I'll be back in just a second.
Good.